to my right in the studio here is...
Ava Himmel. What would you like to know?
Well, so briefly, because we know your story, but just for people listening, because you know you're our foreign correspondent.
Foreign, all the way from Canada. Yeah.
Where in Canada are you from?
Oh, it depends on how well you know Canada, is always how I say it.
I'm from Buffalo, New York.
Okay,
My
well,
backyard.
I'm from Edmonton.
I know exactly where you're from.
But
Go Oilers.
Yeah, go Oilers. But then I moved to Toronto, and I lived in Toronto for 8 years, and that's where I did most of my industry work, acting, and then that's actually where I learned how to become a session runner. And then now my family lives on Vancouver Island, so I just say Canada. But yeah, no, I started session running almost 10 years ago now in Toronto, and then when I moved to LA about 6.5 years ago, that was like the thing I knew how to do. So when I moved here to be an actor, I immediately just like printed off some resumes and started like hitting the studios and started.
Who hired you first?
Arlene at ASG.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was really, she just happened to be there that day too, and I think there was some novelty to having a female session runner. So people were actually really good at giving me a shot, but then I had to prove myself, and I was actually good at it, so then they kept hiring me. But it was, I do say it was actually a benefit.
I do remember you working there a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely where I started. They trained me, and then I moved on from there.
But is there a difference between the scene in Toronto and the scene in LA for auditioning and casting?
100%.
Okay, what are the primary differences?
We don't, and still to this day, because I go back and ask them, like we use LA Casting and Casting Frontier, and we do it like on the computer here. They don't. They still record on the hard drive. And so you go in, you have to fill out your size sheet every time you audition. They take a Polaroid of you, and then you go into the room, and we have to match the numbers. The session runner has to match the numbers with the lobby assistant to make sure, you know, the title maker is on the right number, and then you have to... The title maker. Yeah, I swear.
Are they still using like analog up there, like 3/4?
They're not using the 3/4. No, they're not using 3/4, but they're using the DVD player, and so you're recording onto the hard.
Player, I'm having PTSD.
I know, and so you're recording to the hard drive, and then in a callback you're editing on the hard drive, and then you're having to like rip it and burn discs. And honestly, I came here, and then they were like, "Well, we're gonna have to train you." And I went in for like a half day on LA Casting, and I was like, "I'm sorry, this is what? This is it? I push this button, finalize, and it's done? You mean I don't have to stay for another 3 hours after my session is done?" Like, I was like, "Cool, I'm good. Let's go."
We got it.
So yeah, it's a totally different world here, and I love it. So that's me. Oh, and I guess from the Storytellers Conservatory, I guess I teach the commercial class. So that's my side of it.
Excellent. Well, I'm Charles Carpenter, and I'm a Scorpio, so I'm a water sign. I'm very active in the winter, not so active in the summer, and my goal is to be an LA Rams cheerleader.
Oh, someday.
One day.
Can you give us a cheer?
I have aspirations. Go! Oh, this is radio. You can't see that. I was awesome just now. I did splits and everything.
Yeah, his headstand was amazing.
Yeah. You know, I think I'm the grand old man in the room. I've been very blessed to be working in the union since '94, and back before they invented fire, and running sessions since 2000. And it's funny because a lot of people have asked me over the years, like, well, why didn't you start casting and be your own casting director? And I love the craft of acting and writing. Like, casting is great, and it facilitates a lot of stuff. And I have met some of the most amazing people in the world. The people in this room, I wouldn't be a part of the Storytellers Conservatory were it not for being able to meet Sean through working casting and meeting you casting and putting you on tape. I think that's how we met the first time, was just auditioning you, And so I have friendships. So my cup runneth over because of it. But I'm not a casting director. I do take pride in being a session director because
it's a different skill set.
It's a different skill set. You get to actually get in and breaking down I love breaking down the scene and seeing how to block it and tell the story, because all an audition is an exchange of information. The directors, writers, producers, they need certain beats that need to be hit. You need to tell a certain amount, and how is that information exchanged, and how can we do it in the most efficient manner possible.
And
So
sometimes it's like a game of telephone.
Yes.
We're hearing the message like 5 people removed.
Totally.
Now, I have one quick item because it's been mentioned several times. For people who don't know, what is the Storyteller Conservatory?
Well, I think we can all pitch in and say this, at least for me, the way I joined was Sean approached me, strangely enough, at an audition that he was running for a McDonald's job. And I came in to audition, which was great. And he said, I'm teaching classes and I'm really looking for somebody to come in and start teaching on camera, scene study and audition technique. And I said, I would love to, because I taught for many years with the man who's like a father to me. When my dad was dying of Alzheimer's, this guy stepped in and he became a dad to me. His name's Ernie Lively, and just a great man, great human being. And I taught with him for a number of years, and then I stopped. And I didn't realize how much I missed teaching until Sean gave me the opportunity to come in with him under his banner and start teaching. And Sean's philosophy towards the craft mirrors my own. And he's just taken such a long time to document it and really put form to the substance of what he does. And I realized, we teach in a very similar way. And we started teaching and working together. Now I've been teaching alongside of Sean for this is now 2.5 years in, and I absolutely love every moment of it. And the class family that we've built has spread to now include John came on, who you'll meet in a minute, ladies and gentlemen, as an educator, and Ava and our other partner, Michael Bradley, who is an amazing educator. And so we have a school, Storytellers Conservatory, and we teach. There's so much that we teach, and I realized, wow, I actually know some shit. There's stuff that I know. I'm not just BSing, which
It's
is
a weird
cool.
threshold to cross over when you realize that you are in a position to add value to other people with what you've done.
And it's weird, right? Like, I don't know how you feel, but when I began teaching, I felt like, is this right? Is this okay? Like, to pass along this information is this good to do? Are they getting what I'm sending out?
I had to tell myself before I started teaching too that that's kind of what I do every day. Like, even the best actors who come in to audition for me, I have to come up with something more that they can bring.
Mm-hmm.
Just even if it's just a tweak, even if it's something, that's what we're trained to do that. Every day that we go in to run a session, we get better and better at that. So we already have that skill. So it is to bring that into teaching. I think it actually lends itself very well, session runner to teacher.
But it's funny because when you go into run sessions, I tell people you're teaching an acting class every day for the 6-8 hours, whatever it is.
Especially if it's non-union.
But but then it's weird to actually then wear the mantle of being a teacher and say, this isn't for the purposes of casting. This is me taking the information that I've gleaned over the years and now moving it on. But to raise the level of discourse in this industry is something that I really want to do. And I think
before I forget, and then we'll meet John, in our sessions, it's not really our place or appropriate to be really teaching people the craft, especially since I also personally feel like there's only so much I should try to help a performer in the room, where then it gets to a point where when they're at the callback, they won't be able to reproduce what I helped them achieve in the first call. And it kind of is like fraudulent advertising that this performer can actually do the work, because God forbid that person get hired and then they're on set and they can't give what I was able to pull out of them in the first call. So it's really not appropriate for me to really try to teach someone, but more kind of guide and that kind of stuff. But then in a teaching environment, we can actually dive in and develop the instrument and the mindset and things like that. So it's almost like in the room, I have to let people go not doing the best work that they can.
I actually have a little story about that, because I was running a room years ago and the casting director was in the room with me, and this guy came in for a Best Buy commercial and he had 2 lines and he was so nervous and he kept fumbling them, and the casting director was like, you know what, you're nervous, it's fine, go outside, practice a little bit more, come back in. Comes back in, still nervous, still fumbling, but we get 2 good enough takes out of him. He gets a call back. Comes to the callback. fumbles again. He's on the table at the end and they're loving him and they're like, he was kind of nervous. He was kind of fumbling a bit, but that's probably just because it was a callback. He'll be fine on set. And I was in my head being like, nope, I have not seen this guy do it once clean. And then I found out later he got to set and he could not get these 2 lines out and they ended up having to send him home.
Wow.
So I agree with that. It's like you can only do so much in the room because you don't want to. I always try and give people the best, try and get them to the best place they can get to. But at the same time, you have to be fair with what level they're at and show that.
Remind me to tell my Best Buy story in a second.
Okay.
Let's meet John. He's patiently waiting in silence, like he doesn't want to even be heard until he's been introduced.
You don't know me yet, so why should I talk? We will not speak. Yeah, that's funny because I was, this is John, I was flashing to sometimes when I give like notes to an actor in the room and then all of a sudden I see their eyes glass over and I'm like, oh no, I've given them too many. I know, they're overloaded, their brains shut down. So, hello, my name is John Ruby. I'm originally from Wisconsin, but I've been out here in Los Angeles for over like almost 15 years now. And I got my start in casting. I really needed a job. I had an audition. I was at 200 South. I went to the back where you're not supposed to go, where the casting directors live. And I introduced myself to Bob Brunson and Corey Greenhouse and said, I need a job. And as they tell it, I told a little white fib, which was I was interested in production and not an actor. As I tell it, I think I was honest with them. So,
Well, you're telling it, so yeah.
They're not here to dispute it. So I started off answering phones and then taking Polaroids, helping with size cards. And then I remember I had only trained for maybe an hour. And this is when you had the 3/4 inch tape, which is going way back to Charles remembering. I don't know if that was even around, Sean, when you got here. No, that was like you hit the buttons like and you're like action. So I had trained for about an hour, and then someone at 200 South had a callback, and they needed someone. The session director didn't show up, so I was like, I can do it. So I got in there, and I was having problems with like the DVD player or something. Probably I just didn't know how to use it. But I just remember like looking at all the machines and there was like clients behind me, the casting director, and I was just like sweating and I'm like, I got to figure it out. You're good. Oh God. And then finally I got it working and that was kind of the start. It's kind of a launching into it. Yeah. And one of the things I was just thinking about is just a little bit of the titles especially in commercial casting. So you have the casting director and then usually in the office you have what's called an associate or an assistant. Mm-hmm. And then when I first started, I think this is I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I remember there was someone who really made a big difference between a camera operator and a session director. And at the time I was like, well, I don't really. And now I think it's kind of interesting how we define ourselves or what we call ourselves. And I do think, there's an interesting thing because we are directing in a certain sense. We are working with actors. And I think, this person who I was talking with, they felt camera operator was a little more like a button pusher. And part of, I think, really respecting the audition process is knowing that, yes, decision makers are further on down the line, but people like ourselves or casting associates or assistants are so helpful in that process. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're like the conduit to them.
We're the gatekeepers.
We're the gatekeepers that like know exactly, well, I read on the sheet, it said, depressed. It's like, well, we got to update that now they want this person positive because that was too depressing. So take what's coming out of my mouth, not what you had preconceived and read on the storyboard because this is what's newest, right? So I was just thinking about that, of just this idea of, using us.
Early on, you would hire, or casting directors would hire a camera operator and pay that person to solely run the decks and the equipment. Yep. And then they would hire a session director to direct the actors, and nary the twain would meet in terms of what their job responsibilities were. And over the years, those jobs began to morph into one. So a lot of people will interchangeably use the term. I like session director because I feel like you are directing everything within the confines of the room. You have to handle the mechanics. You have to handle the software and all that. But you also have to be able to speak the language to the actors or to people who aren't actors, who come in and be it a real people job or you're putting athletes on tape or you're doing whatever you're doing, and find a way to bridge that gap to be able to talk to them. So yeah, it is interesting how, and some people still hold, oh yeah, you're a camera operator. Well, in point of fact, that is one of the things that I do.
Right.
But we are also the prop department. We are wardrobe.
And now we're
hair and
becoming the
makeup, but
lobby
yeah.
assistants half the time.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
So
And sometimes I feel that I'm like, I'm now doing 3 people's jobs. And I can't focus on the main one, which is the directing.
That brings up a good point about how billing works on the casting director to the client side, because sometimes there's casting directors that will bill for things, but we don't see any of that money. Like, yeah, we're doing all 3 jobs. They're billing the clients for all 3 jobs, but we're not seeing any of that money. And that's a shame, because it's a real blessing to them that they have capable help that can handle those responsibilities. Now, the term session director is really important for me, because as you guys know, I have a book that I put out back in like 2013 called Commercial Acting in LA: A Session Director's Guide.
I feel like I consulted on that. John Ruby here.
You actually, both of you are in the thank you, special thanks section. So absolutely, actually, there's a quote in the book that is directly from one of the pieces of feedback you gave me, the concept of like a commercial being like a mini movie or like a short movie or something like that, 15-second film.
Especially these days.
Yeah, and so, but the fact that I called it a session director's guide back in 2013, that wasn't a mistake. That was like very intentional, because I was tired of our relationship to casting directors and to the performers being, oh, they're just the cam op. It's like, no, you can't do this job without us. I'd like to see some of you casting directors actually get behind the camera on this software and see you do what we do.
Oh, it'd be
no,
a shit show.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it just for the comedic value of it.
Right.
It would be hysterical.
I had a casting director once who like pushed me out of the way to like run the camera, and then she did like three groups, and I'm just standing there like an idiot, and then the tech guy comes into the room and he's like, your last 3 groups are out of focus. And I was like,
Right.
not my fault.
It's the real world. I don't know what to tell you.
So it's like I really wanted the session director moniker to catch on and do whatever I could with putting that out there, so that not just the actors and the acting community saw us as their partners in the room to help them, book the job and to get, and to respect our place in that process, because certainly we know how deferential they are to casting directors, but when they interact with us, we can sometimes be treated like the help, or at least that's how it felt to me sometimes when I was just cam opping, where, like you just said, John, like they'll just completely ignore the stuff you're telling them in the room because, well, you're not the casting director, or you're not the director, or whatever it is. It's like, I'm actually an extension of both right now.
I do find though that the actors that are like the regulars don't. Like, they know the value we bring, because I have actors that I see on a regular come to me all the time. They're like, oh, I'm so glad you're running this session. Or like at the callback, they're coming to me to be like, okay, what do I do? What are the notes? What are the notes? Like, they know we're their best friend in that room. And the casting director really, their focus is on their client much more than the actual actor. Like, we are there to support the actor. We're there to get the best takes, the best quality out of that actor. So like our job depends on it, quite frankly. So I find the good actors know that.
Totally.
And it's the ones that haven't learned that yet.
Well, and it's you can't necessarily fault the actors for not really knowing how the casting process works just instinctually, because there isn't a lot of education in a college or a high school environment that can prepare people for what our world is like when they step into it. But yeah, there's only, how many people do you think there are in the country that have our job? Less than 100?
I would say probably about 100.
You know what I mean? In the country.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I spent a month in New York, and I was auditioning out there. I wasn't running sessions, but, New York, I would guess, is the second largest market behind LA.
Yeah.
And they don't have facilities as big as here. You know what I mean? So they're a little bit same size or maybe smaller. So, if we have the majority here, and then New York's a smaller market, so that my number drops, and then Chicago drops, and then a couple, other places. Yeah, I would say probably around 100.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a very, when I moved here, so, I haven't talked about my story on this series yet, but briefly as it relates to running session, I worked for a company in Minnesota before I moved out here that had a bunch of, high profile investors, and one of them was Joe Blake. And so when I moved out here, I was introduced to Joe, and Joe said, "Do you have an agent?" I said, "Nope." Or actually, I did. I said, "Yeah, I did. I was with O'Neill at the time." So I said, "Yeah, I have an agent." He's like, "Do you want to run sessions?" I said, "What's that?" And then I spent 2 weeks with Nick and with Mike as they got me up to speed. And that's Nick Kahanick and Mike Adams, who were awesome. They were kind of my Mr. Miyagi's back then. And I was running sessions full time 2 weeks later. And it was, once you work with somebody like Joe, who can, be a tough personality to interact with sometimes,
Still won't hire me.
people know that you can handle a high stress environment. And so and at that time, Joey and Andreas were still officing out of Ocean Park for when they started casting Frontier Submission Service and all that. And so that's when they had me go out and start training other studios and session directors on how to use iSession and all that. And that's kind of how I got networked throughout Los Angeles. Within a couple of years, I was working for offices all over.
I do want to say though, because I get asked a lot of "Ooh, that looks like fun. I want to be a session runner." And I have to say to people all the time, it is like acting. It is like anything else. It is a hustle. You're constantly trying to find your clients, and what we were talking about earlier of it goes in ebbs and flows. You can be working for a casting director nonstop for a year, then all of a sudden they get slow, or you guys just kind of fall out of favor, or something happens, and then all of a sudden you have to go find those clients that you had before that aren't calling anymore, and then they start calling, and you're at this studio for a while, and then you're at this studio, and it's a grind like anything else. And I think when we talk about how many session runners are there, there's quite a few that do it every once in a blue moon.
Occasionally.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think there's a finite group of us, and I think we know who we are, who this is what we do. Yes, of course we're actors or we're other things as well, but we make our money session running. We're the ones that are going through.
Can you define what session runner is so people who are listening who might not know exactly what it is?
Oh, I thought you were having an audio issue. I was what?
See, and-
If Ross is raising his hand, there's got to be a problem.
Well, and I think this is what we come into of defining what we call ourselves. I say session runner, and I usually use it industry when I'm talking to industry people, because session runner is the combination of camera op and session director, and then everyone knows what I mean session runner. But when I'm talking to people outside the industry, I usually use the term session director because it gets more authority, and it speaks to something greater than just a camera op.
And when
who's
we're
pushing
talking
buttons.
amongst each other, we say, who's running that session? So we
Yeah.
say, session running, but our title is that of a session director and a camera operator.
Yeah, but it's hard to say both. And then session director, a lot of times they think, oh, you're not running the camera. And especially for me as a woman, I get worried about that. I don't want people to think I can't do the technical side. I'm only there to direct the session. So then I usually end up using the term session runner to just.
I was going to say, when you ask about people working in casting, and usually, it is somewhere you have to know someone, that's almost always how it, it helps to get that in. I do think, I always advise people, especially newer actors, if you have a job that you work at night or whatever, it's always great to intern or work somewhere, whether it's casting, whether it's an agency, a management company, because you're going to learn so much, especially early on, right? You're going to make
100%.
contacts, you're going to learn so much, especially when you're first starting, because also time flies by. It goes by so quickly. So before you know it, those assistants you met your first year out, you look back and you're like, well, it's 5 years later, and now they're producing stuff or they're casting directors. So I always think it's really good when people, even though, right, what we do, it is work, it is a hustle, it's a grind, but I always say it's great, especially early on, just to get a taste for it or flavor for it, and then say, okay, this is not a world I really want to live in, or this is, but you definitely going to learn something from it versus I'm just going to kind of stay in this lane the whole time,
I think there's also something, what I've noticed anyway, is if you're willing to come in and work for free, which sounds terrible, but really be there, not necessarily that you're working, but you're really engaged in being there and you're really going to give some benefit, people don't tend to take advantage of that for too long. If they really see that you are bringing something, they're willing to pay you. They're willing to move you into some sort of position, whether it pays a lot or a little, I don't know, that depends on the person, but I do find that when I came and I went to ASG first, and they had to train me, and I was like, that's fine, I'll come in, I'll work some days for free. And it didn't take long for them to be like, great, you know what you're doing, we'll pay you now. And I think I 100% agree with you. You need to be willing to come in and be like, I don't know anything about this, but I'm willing to learn, and then really bring yourself to it.
Yeah, because they can't trust you with the day of casting until you can be seamless. You know, you could swap out for somebody else and it won't affect the session at all. So you kind of have to, you know, contribute your time as a volunteer until you're fully up to speed.
And that's another thing. I mean, I get asked a lot to like train people. And when I was first starting out, I would be like, yeah, come on in, you know, and I would allow people to learn on my time. And that bit me in the butt a couple times, right? Because also you're working for someone else and they're kind of looking over your shoulder. And I think a lot of casting directors be really good at what they do have to be kind of anal or micro in certain ways. And so then if I'm sticking my neck out for someone and they're not really ready, then it reflects on me, right? So I'm still always willing to try to help people and do things like that. But I think, you know, what you guys are saying is right. It's like you got to be ready. You got to be at the professional level. Otherwise, it's hard for us to offer that. It's almost like a favor in a certain sense.
I've probably trained 13 or 14 people, and only one of them actually did everything that I told them that they needed to do, and that's Jolene Kay, and she put in something like 5 to 6 months of not every day, but coming on a regular basis to acquaint herself and building relationships. I think first we were working a lot with John Beauregard and cast partner at the time, and so, you know, and then she would be able to start taking things over seamlessly, and then started working on her own and all that. And now she's running sessions all the time, and she started building a relationship with like house casting, where I never had a relationship with them, but she just walked in and was able to start working with those guys and stuff. But she did everything right. You know, she put the time in, she put herself out there. She, you know, yeah, but it was a lot of invested time, but also because we had become friends. And so it was easier to kind of like spend time together.
Well, that's another thing I just was thinking, you know, there's that, I don't know if it's an adage, but it's like be nice to everyone. Well, why does that make sense? Well, here's why it can help you. I was just thinking about, like you mentioned, the guy you guys were helping out in that callback or whatever. But it also can help out a lot of times, like as session directors in a callback. If we get a good relationship with the director or whatever, they'll turn to us when someone leaves and be like, "What do you think?"
100%.
And we're not making the decision, but if they ask us our opinion, I'll be like, hey, I really liked him or her, or, you know, I thought they were okay. You know, I mean, I'll be kind of honest. And if you've been friendly to me, if I like you, if you haven't been a jerk to me, why would I not help you out? Right? I think that's where like the being nice, it's like if you like someone, if they're talented, if they're doing good work, why would I not try to help that person out, either to get into casting or get a job?
Well, so good. I want to back up then, and I want to do something that I don't think we've done very much whenever we do talks at, you know, at the union, or we did that talk at the Road Theater Company and stuff. But our job, our day, like let's walk people through a typical day, right? So we get the call from a casting director, usually a text or something, just being like, hey, you know, are you available to, you know, for you know, these 3 days or these 2 days or something like that to run session. Sure, or whatever, right? Okay, you're put on hold, and then they'll confirm as the job awards or whatever it is. And so sometimes you're like, oh, sorry, the job went away, and then we got nothing for you. So your
They
job
don't usually
can,
text you to tell you that. They just don't. They just, you never
like,
hear
am I
from them
working
again.
today? Oh no, sorry, the job went away. You know, but otherwise, like, okay, you're booked, and then that means okay, you can count on it. So great, you're, and sometimes it's the night before you know, they've got a session that came in. So then get to the studio around 9:30, depends on the studio.
Half hour before the session starts.
Yeah, that's most frequent, right? Like sometimes I remember some people would try to get you there an hour ahead of time, and then I found that I had just too much time in the morning, really.
Yeah, you'll say like the typical thing is 9:30 for a 10.
Yeah.
Like you get there 9:30 to set up. Personally, I like to get there an hour before, because I want to get everything done. I want to do my sound check. I want to do my video check. I want to make sure everything's set. And then all the little foibles and mistakes and rewrites that are sure to come that I've seen. Oh yeah, they rewrote the script. Of course they did. Now I have that time to prepare and go in and be like, okay, good. All the technical stuff is taken care of. Some studios just don't open. The studio manager is coming in at 9:32, and like, all right, well, I'm here. Let's get going. So yeah, 9:30 for 10.
We won't name
Yeah.
any names on
No,
that
we won't, but we
particular
could.
facility. So, you get there, and what a lot of the actors who come in for us don't realize is that we're getting up to speed in that half hour before the day begins on that job, unless we're in day 2 or 3 or something like that of a campaign. But even on a campaign, we're probably doing a new spot or something like that, or new roles. So it's you get there, and you got a half hour to fire up the room, get everything warmed up, test out the sound, make sure
Pull out
everything's
the
set up.
props.
Pull out the props, set up the props, debate the props, whatever it is, what I want to use. And then you're reading through the director's treatment sometimes. You're looking over the spot, making copies. You
Having
have to write up a
conversation.
board. If you don't have a lobby assistant, you got to write up the board, which you guys know is the cue cards with all the dialogue on it. Trying to make it legible, which is really hard for me to do that. Trying not to write too big at the top, so I'm writing super small by the time I get to the bottom. And I don't want to go on to 2 pages. Help me, God, do not go on to 2 pages. Which is actually a problem because if you do have to go to 2 pages, well, then everyone's looking so far down for their words that it throws off the eye line. So it's
Do you see people? Do you see how hard we work for you?
This is all the first half hour. That's right. God forbid you didn't go to the restroom before you got to the studio that morning, because there's 10 minutes you couldn't afford to miss in the morning. The actors are arriving there, generally around 10 o'clock. People start.
Well, and we have that conversation with the casting director too to find out because yes, there's the treatment, but they also got to have a phone call with the production and find out more information. And so sometimes there's that, or sometimes the casting director already has an idea of how they want the audition to go. Sometimes they don't, and they just want to hear what you're going to do with it, but they like to have that initial conversation.
Yeah, and that's a casting director by casting director basis type of thing. Some
Yeah.
casting directors will say, you just do it. You know what you're doing. Let me know if you need anything. Other casting directors will be really heavily involved in crafting every moment of this thing. And sometimes that's great because you know that they really care. Sometimes it's just micromanaging, and it's let me do my job. I know what I'm doing. But there are some casting directors that I'm sure we won't name any names just out of love for everybody, but there's some casting directors that are exasperating to work with. There's others that are a dream to work with. There's some that work really, really hard. There's some that kind of phone it in and can get away with just kind of casting from a distance because they can just let their team, they hire good people.
I was gonna say.
And the team takes care of everything to make them look good, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the conversation with the casting director. Then you've got your first group of the day. And we'll call them a group, whether it's one person or it's a bunch of people, right? When we upload these auditions after you leave the room, they're called groups on the casting services online. So you have your first group, whether you have a lobby assistant who's prepping people and putting them in groups or whatever, or whether you need to go out there and run the lobby, which we'll talk about running lobby and give actors some advice on how they can make our job a little bit easier, because that really slows our day down if we've got groups of multiple actors and we have to run the day and it's packed tight. That's like when we don't get lunches.
I have a quick question about groups. Are they grouped in any particular order? People you've seen before, or new talent, or is there no order to how people are grouped?
I don't think there's
In terms of
There
grouped
isn't-
or scheduled?
Scheduled.
Scheduling is the casting director's job. They schedule however they want to schedule. But the groups has to do with what we're doing that day. So if it's like a husband and wife coming in, then it's I need a guy and I need a girl. And it's usually whoever shows first.
Yeah, we generally do 3-hour blocks, right? So maybe say in the morning, which is what we'll call from 10 to 1, which is when we generally break for lunch. That's when you're going to see, say, the husband and the wife. Yeah. So we're seeing husbands and wives until 1. Then we change over the set and everything so that in the afternoon, then we're seeing the kids, right?
Yeah.
Like the daughter and the son or something. And then the next day we'll do the jugglers that they pass on, the boardwalk. And then in the afternoon we'll do skateboarders, and we'll go shoot in the outside so we can have them prove that they can skateboard or something like that. So that's how we kind of clump them together. Rarely is it that with a husband and wife thing, we might say, okay, we called you in with this particular person for a reason because you guys really look like a good couple for this. So, where we tend to be flexible with where people come, whether they're 10 minutes late or whatever it is to their audition time, or sometimes ask for the entire time frame, can I come anytime between 10 and 1? So sometimes we offer that, although that really sucks sometimes because then people come and bunch up right at 1 and you're trying to get to lunch and
There's
all that.
always that flip-flop of too many women or too many men.
Yeah, and some casting directors will be very draconian and rigid in the way they enforce that time. And they'll say, nope, we're here to here and that's it. And others, you have a little bit of leniency and leeway in how you can then administer, well, who's coming in with what. And even as you're breaking down, like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure because we've all talked about it, but you set the scene the way it's supposed to work in a perfect world. You've got the mom, the dad, and then the lawyer who comes in and says his one line. But we have to, as well as that, we have to block the scene out for every contingency, meaning we don't have a lawyer, we don't have a mom, we have two dads. What are we going to do? So then it's like, okay, how can I shoot this effectively? Like, I have a lawyer and a mom, but no dad. Okay, well, now I'm going to have to block it like this to get this in, to get these shots in. Whereas some casting directors will just say, if you don't have the full group, no, it doesn't work.
And that's when we're grabbing the lobby assistant or like another session director, like, hey, can you come in and
Can
you come
do
and do
this
this?
real
Yeah.
quick? I need a dad. I need a...
But I do think too, like, what sometimes actors, you know, they'll read the script or whatever and they're like, oh, this is what it's going to be. And then they come in the room and they're very surprised because we end up doing something different than what's in the script, or it's just it's a section of it. We're not doing the whole thing, and that has to do a lot with like what the casting director, what the director specifically needs to see. And we can't shoot the commercial. We have one room, we have limited props, we got 3 lights and 1 camera, and so we really have to figure out how to like create the beginning, middle, and an end in that amount of time. And so sometimes that means we clump things together, or we add on to a scene that isn't in the script, or like, you know, we create these other moments so that we can get the
information.
The information, yeah. And I know that sometimes with like newer actors and stuff, that can kind of throw them because they're just like, but this is what the script says, like this is what I was going to do. And I do think that's like a great skill. It's like, as an actor, you need to be able to just like go with it, because, and people get so scared like with scripts and whatever, and you know, it's like, I have to get all the lines right, or I have to get this right, and I have to get that right. And it's like, how many times are you on set and things just get thrown out the window, or they come up with this brilliant idea in Video Village and you're just having to roll with it. So it's like, you got to show that you can do that already in the audition. And you go into that room and you might have a preconceived idea of what you're going to do in that room, but you have to be able to throw that out.
So for people who don't know, Video Village is
Video Village is when you're on set and the producers, the ad agency people, and the clients and all those people sit in one little area with their monitors, and that's called Video Village. And the director will go back there to like check with them if they're happy with what he's doing and go back and forth. And so a lot of times the ad agency is there, they're finally seeing their baby come to life, and then they're kind of, in some senses, I guess, maybe proving their worth or whatever, but they're getting new ideas. And so sometimes they're throwing new stuff out.
So how would you guys describe, before we continue on with like our first group of the day, people come into a commercial audition and it's like cameras and lights and like mics and props and all this stuff, and then they go on a theatrical audition to like a little trailer on a lot somewhere with like a 1995 camcorder and like nothing in the room, right? So why all this additional lighting and computers and all that stuff for commercial auditions?
Well, ultimately, it's because of the way the machine is set up, because it isn't funded from a studio where you have the casting director and they just have to respond to the studio heads. This goes through a number of channels. You have the production company, you have the client itself who hires the production company, and the ad agency who comes in to put in their 2 cents to the client as to how this is going to be shaped out. So everything goes through so many different hands. It isn't just a writer's room that clears this and now the producers get to hand this out. Everything is worked out to the umpteenth degree so that when they come in, plus let's understand something, you guys, creatives are not all that fucking creative. I'm sorry. You have to be able to explain to them in the simplest of terms what this is. So in order to do that, in commercial casting, we utilize better equipment so that it is a better produced product, because it isn't just, okay, yeah, well, it's Debbie in trailer number 2, and yeah, we know what it is, and here's this, and we're just trying to match this. They are going to show this professional product to their clients in New York or in Germany or wherever it is, and so the caliber of production has to be up-leveled. And the props are there in order to make sure, oops, I shouldn't have done that.
That's okay.
I said, I touched my shirt. I did, and it scratched me. And I got scared.
Just go back to where you were.
Okay. So even if you have, like, you have to show the clients a quality product, and these clients could be in New York and they can be in Germany or wherever they are, and they are expecting a certain level of professionalism and production value.
And they're not in the industry.
And they're not in the industry.
They don't
So
know this world.
having a table full of products or props to see, okay, well, this is the burger, and look at this, and here is the steering wheel, so we see that it's a car. So, you know, so that we can create the facade of the world as completely as possible for people who are not in the industry and are not part of the storytelling process per se, outside of the fact that they have this product that they need to sell.
And I think I 100% agree with everything you just said. And I think to sort of add to that as well, it's a 15-second, 30-second like product. When you are doing a theatrical, you have so much more time to develop a character, to show things will be added. But we see sometimes in the callbacks when ad agencies and production companies are having those conversations and they're discussing the shade of blue that the bowl on the counter is going to be, and does it like match the logo, and you know, or the colors of the brand, and whatever. Things are so specific that we have to be able to show that kind of specificity in the audition as well. So it's like we only get this like finite amount of time, so we need to be able to show this person and their essence and their ability and all that kind of stuff so very specifically that we have to bring all those other things in to make the world for them.
Yeah, it's this. When you come in for a commercial audition, your audition tape is a professionally produced product that's going to be presented in a client presentation in some ad agency or something like that. So people have to be able to hear, see, not have to use their imagination so much, compare apples to apples. It's a completely different internal process than on the theatrical side. Okay.
And but one thing I have to say for every actor listening, when you come into a commercial audition, you guys, please treat it professionally. Treat it like this is a job on par with your role on This Is Us or your role in the next Avengers movie, because you're going to get paid and compensated well for your time.
Better sometimes.
Yeah, better, because you're coming into SAG work, go union. But you have to understand that, because I can't tell you how many times people come in to me in a rush and they're like, hey man, listen, I gotta be in Santa Monica in 30 minutes. Do you think I could if you have to be somewhere in 30 minutes, I suggest you go there, okay? I really do, because now you're coming in and going to give me this half-hearted performance just because you feel like you owe it to us to show up and just kind of do this so that you can just try to hit your auditions along the way. I guarantee you, if you got an audition for a feature film or for a Hulu gig or for any major network show, you would take the time to do it, you would get there early, and you would sit your happy ass in that lobby until they called you in. But you show up to us and you expect us to hear this song and dance.
Because it's just a commercial.
Because it's just a commercial.
But the funny thing is, in entertainment, you never know where those opportunities are going to come from. And I can tell you, you know, as the grandfather in the room who's been doing it since '86, it is never the place where you think it's going to come from, at least in my experience. It's never that studio head or your friend who's a director or so-and-so. It seems to come from, you know,
Well, and
it circumnavigates somehow.
It does.
yeah, and also like to that point, when you come in and you're just like half-assing the audition or you're half-assing even the slate, I feel like why I give out the same amount of energy that I expect the audition to have. So if it's like a high energy jumping around kind of audition, I'm bringing that to every single group that comes in. So by the end of the day, I'm fucking exhausted. So if you're coming in and not giving me that, then I'm like, why should I be giving you that? Like
I can tell you this. You know, I did a few things with the Foo Fighters, and I can tell you that when they play sound check, or they play a small venue for friends, or they play a stadium, you get the exact same performance. They are on every time. It's like Gwen Stefani's makeup. It is never wrong.
She is a goddess.
I'm telling you, and she battle makeup is always on.
Yeah.
But,
I love that.
Well, that, I mean, how many times have you all said, you know, to a group when you're doing like a group explanation, and we'll talk about group explanations in a second, is if I can do it, you can do it. You know what I mean? You just watched me do it.
Can I ask a quick question about when the actors come in? How much time do you typically spend with each actor or each group of talent when they're in the room?
Depends on what their what our schedule is.
Some groups are scheduled, so you've got one every 10 minutes, you got one every 5, sometimes you got one every 7. It really depends upon what it is that they're trying to do. For me, the first barometer is, are you prepared? Are you ready? How much time do I have to spend with you? Like Sean was saying, how much teaching am I actually going to have to do here? Or can we have this conversation at a higher level so I can really get in and get specific with you? If I feel like I can work with somebody, I will give them all of that 7 minutes if I can. And if I see that I just can't, or you're not in it, or you got to go, then I make that decision right away. I'm like, I don't have the time to babysit you through this, because Screen Actors Guild mandates, if it's a SAG job, okay, we have an hour to get that person in and out, or else the production gets dinged for that, and nobody is happy with that when that happens. So all of us have been doing this for a long time. We have that internal clock hardwired, so we're already thinking, okay, we got to get this up and we got to get this going. So we will give you as much time as we possibly can. But if you come in prepared, you will merit more of our attention.
And I think all of us have been doing this long enough that we can tell after the first take what level you're at. And that doesn't mean you won't still book it. You know, like there's lots of variables to booking a job, but I can tell where your level is, and I can tell how far I can push you. And especially after the second take, once I've given you a redirect, I know where you're going to end up. And so I already know that it's going to take me at least 10 more takes to get you to where that last person came in and did in the second take. So there's no point. I'm going to get you
for a copy of their audition.
They never ask for a copy. Sometimes they ask to see it. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I already pressed the button. It's gone. There was something I was going to sort of, shoot, I think it's gone now. Something I was going to say.
Well,
to
I
what you were saying.
sometimes, you know, want somebody to see what they've done, you know, as long as I have time, like if I'm not stressed. But sometimes, because, you know, I really love and enjoy every opportunity when somebody comes in the room. Every group, I'm excited to see what they bring to it. And if they did something really great, or I saw that it's work that they should be really proud of that they did, I'm like, come on over here, you want to see it? And they're like, sometimes like, oh no, I don't like to see my, or I'm like, yeah, I've never been given an opportunity to see it. I'm like, well, great, come on over here. We play it back and like, see how great that was? And they leave just beaming because they don't ordinarily get a chance to see their work. So much of auditioning is just doing what you do in the room and then just letting it go, because you're never going to get feedback or know how it was received. And even when somebody in the room says, great job, you think, well, they say that to everybody. But when you can bring someone over, see that great expression you just gave, or see that wonderful moment, it really means a lot to some of those people. But if we're really busy, like nobody listening to this should expect it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, God, no.
Right?
But I think I remember what I was going to say to what you were saying of like, you need to come in and you need to like be on point and you need to, you know, be prepared. But I always worry sometimes with especially new actors is to also just come in to play. Be ready to play. Because I do see sometimes, and I know we're going to talk about group directions in a second, but where I will see like, I'll be giving group direction and like, some of the people are just like glazed eyes, like, yeah, just get on with it. I'm bored. I don't want to do this. And then others are like, not listening to me because they're so focused on like, I have to listen to every word she's saying. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And they're like, they're too tense. And like, sometimes they just need to like relax and know that you're going to come in and play.
Group number one. Group number one. Because ultimately, we sometimes are using the first couple of groups to kind of iron things out in the morning.
They're the guinea pigs.
Exactly. So anybody listening to this, you're our guinea pigs, first group or two in the morning. Don't be surprised if we put you through a bunch of stuff and say, hold on, don't leave. I have to have the casting director look at what we just did and make sure that they're okay with it before I release you. Sometimes, you know, you do release them and the casting director or the note comes in like a half hour into the session, we're changing things. It's like, oh God. those first few people kind of like are not going to be able to be seen in the same light as everybody else who came in.
But please, everybody, don't misconstrue that to mean if you get a 10 o'clock call time, you should show up at 12. Just come. Just come on
Sometimes the
time.
guinea pigs are the best ones of the day, honestly, and they book it. I've had
I didn't
that
say it
happen.
was right or wrong or good or bad.
I'm just saying, I don't want people to think, oh, well, if I'm the guinea pig, I'll just show up later automatically. And then
Well, one thing I think we could say is that if you are in the first group, maybe first couple of groups, maybe stick around for 5 or 10 minutes after you've gone, just to make sure everything's cool, because sometimes the casting directors has multiple jobs going on and they couldn't take the moment to watch what we just did, and then they get back like, oh, I actually want to do this, and so they're already gone. So the first group is like, could be, we bring you back in and try something else or something. But just, the first group of the day, just be ready to work through it with us, because we're also trying things out and refining things. By the time, okay, so let's talk about group explanations, right? So those of you who commercially audition know you come in, and oftentimes if we can save the time by giving the explanation to many people at once instead of doing it on an individual basis, we'll do that. Mm-hmm. And our group explanation by the end of the day is so honed and tight because we've learned how to anticipate, or we've seen a full day of where people are not doing things the way they need to be done, or to use better language, or to be more clearly demonstrative, or whatever it is. But the group explanation, what are some tips and experience with the group explanation? We bring you all into the room, and...
Does anyone else find that your group explanations by the end of the day are so long compared to how they started at the beginning? Because I've just added so much to it.
For example, morning group explanation. All right, everybody, you're just going to sit here, hands on the wheel, and then when you see me raise my hand, just smile and then look out the window. End of the day. Okay, guys, it's not that hard. You sit here. Nobody drives like this. Why are you doing this with your hands? You do not keep cranking the wheel.
Don't adjust your rear view mirror. We get it.
The two things that people do worse than anything else in castings: people don't know how to eat, and people don't know how to drive.
Yeah.
If people drove and eat the way in real life, the way they came in and thought that it was done, we would have a bunch of accidents over the road, and nobody would want to see each other in restaurants because you don't, no, this is wonderful. No, you don't smile like that.
Oh, you just came up with something I don't want to let go. The nodding.
Nodding. Oh my gosh.
Right? That you can't just see something. You have to
nod and acknowledge that, yeah.
People in real life do not nod like this.
That's what it comes down to, quite frankly, is be a real person.
So my favorite example of that is I was running a casting where someone was running like with a laptop, and then they had to check their watch, and they're like behind, so they got to run faster. So this guy's running, and he's wearing a real watch, and I go, check your watch. And he looks at the other wrist.
Oh my God.
And then starts running faster. And I'm cut. Are you aware you're wearing a real watch? Yes. Why don't you check that as opposed to the wrist without?
I mean, it's a choice.
Yeah.
We could try it.
But I'm thinking he forgot,
Yeah.
the life of it. He
Yeah.
forgot the life, right? I mean, he's wearing a real watch. So to me, that's a
Totally.
perfect example, just
I-
it's right there.
It's right there.
I love group directions, and I think because it's like the one time of the day we get to perform.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I have a group in front of me.
It's stand-up.
You must
It
watch
is
me.
stand up. I try and make jokes, and that's why I don't like having other people like in my room, like casting directors and stuff, because I use the same jokes all day long, and people laugh at them. But I'm like, I know that I've honed them over the day. But yeah, like I love it because I get to make people laugh, and I tend to. I don't want my casting directors to know this, but I tend to make fun of things and try and make
Probably
light of
shouldn't
it.
say that on a podcast then.
Probably shouldn't say it on a podcast. Good thing there's no one here to hear me. But I'll make fun of the product. I'll be like, okay, so you're gonna sit in this car. Guys are driving because it's 1954. I'll say things like that because it loosens people up as opposed to them thinking like this is so scary and stuff. Like I want people to come in and have fun because they need to be in the moment.
Ava, clients never say anything controversial in callbacks.
No,
Over the line.
no, but I'll say things worse than that. I'm just not gonna say them on this guy.
But it is the group explanation as the day goes along, and you see things that people aren't doing right or that is just off. You add that to it so that it's like, I guess, okay, look, I'm going to show you right now all the mistakes that I've seen people make, so that you guys can come in and make all new mistakes that I'll have to fix later on. But at least you won't make those other ones.
Yeah.
But I like making people laugh. I like people coming in and feeling the energy that I give. It's warm and it's inviting. And the four of us in here always do that. Anytime you guys are running a session, I know I'm in a safe place. Now, I take my job very seriously, so I don't need that safety to do a good job. But that having been said, it's great when you know that the person who is the session director holds your esteem and wants to make sure that you are well represented. And so you want everybody. That's why in the group explanation, I like to make people laugh, because if you're laughing, you're listening.
Yeah.
And there is an ease. So when you come in, it's like, yeah, relax.
Well,
We
that
got
group
this.
explanation is where you set the tone.
Yeah.
If you're not running the lobby, where you get to welcome people and really put them at ease by greeting them and making sure that they have what they need and all that,
Right.
the group explanation is the first time you get to set the tone for how their experience is going to go. They can see your heart, they can see where you're coming from, and so they can see your leadership, because one of the things that you are as a session director is that you're a leader. If you're not giving people clear direction, if you're not telling them where to stand, where to go, what to do, they're lost. They're swimming. And so it's really on us to make sure that they know exactly what they need to be doing at every moment of this thing, because we need to make sure we're giving the clients something that they are expecting to see, and we can't have deviation too far from what we established. And all of us, because we're working performers as well, we know those session directors who we've been in their rooms and they give really aggressive or uncomfortable or attitude-y or like the kinds of group direction that they give. And it's like, dude, good luck getting good performances after having spoken to everybody like that.
Speaking of which, just a couple weeks ago, Sean came in for an audition a session that I was running, that I was directing, and I was dealing with a kidney stone at the time. And I was hurting, and it was at the end of the day, and I was trying to be pleasant, but I want everybody to know, like, this job affects us. The way we interact with our fellow actors, it affects us, so that at the end of the day, I texted Sean, like, Sean, was I an asshole at the end of the day? Like, I was trying to be cool and nice, but I was just kind of hurting, but I hope everybody got it and knew that my intention was there. So we really want the best. We want every group to shine. We want
The only thing
everybody
about
to come
that
in and kill it.
particular day was, and we know that voice, it's the end of the day voice. It's like, guys, it's the, okay, so it's not that hard. Don't think too much. It's that voice where it's like, whereas in the morning, you're like, oh, all right, great to see everybody, blah, blah, blah. And then later it's just like, your soul has been a little, the candle's a little dimmer.
The damage a little bit.
And sometimes it's not like, I'm the same way. I love my job. Like I truly, truly love running sessions. I started sort of lobby assisting in Canada, and I hated it. I was like the biggest bitch. And I realized that's how much I loved sessions, because I was like able to do 14 hours, no problem. And I was like happy and pleasant. So when I'm running a session that I also have to go and like do the lobby, and it's dragging my day down and it makes me crabby, like I try not to take that out on the actor, but I am human and sometimes that happens. And I had a session recently where I came in and it was like the client hadn't been happy. This was my first day on the job, but the client hadn't been happy, and now we were had new notes, and she hadn't scheduled for those new notes because she hadn't gotten them in time. The casting director hadn't. And I did not have nearly enough time to do what I needed to do with each of these groups. And I came to her early and said, this isn't working, but she wanted it. I didn't get my lunch. I'm just slamming through people as fast as I can. It was for underwear. So women were having to come in, do the scene, and then get undressed, then do another thing, then get redressed. So it was just, everything was like slow. I was getting so crabby, and I could just feel my blood sugar, and I was just getting snippy with people. And then this one actress who I know, who's come in lots of times, she was like, she dug into her purse and she found a protein bar, and she was like, here. And blood sugar went back up. I was like a different person, and I love her. Like the next time but that was like this lovely moment of like human to human. She wasn't trying to butter me up. Okay, it did give her a better audition because I was happier. But it was a human to human thing. She's built that relationship with me a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But it also just was like, sometimes that's all we need. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes we're just low blood sugar, whatever. We have these other things happening where it's not scheduled properly, and we're not trying to be assholes, but
and I
it
think
happens.
I think a big takeaway for that, because I know what you're saying. I call it when you're in the trenches, like in war. Like we have this look of war. Where it's just like, we just got to get through this, guys and gals. We're not going down without a fight. And it's because you're stressed with your schedule and all those things. And so I think we've all been through that. And I think what the actor can take away from that's coming in is, one, don't take it personally. Don't think that we're out to get you. And then also listen, and it's like, I guess for some reason I'm thinking like, don't over ask. That's what can really drive me crazy. If there's a lot going on and then all the over asking, and it's just like, it's so much to deal with that you don't really see going on. It's like, I prefer, for example, if you give a group explanation, someone's on their phone and they come in later and they ask you the same question you already answered, right? That's maybe an over ask to me of like, I just explained that, I have limited time, that doesn't help me want to help you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So.
But I love when people come in and are just like, I call them my mini, like my 2-minute friendships with people. And those get built over time. And they're not, like, I hate the word networking. I always say, just don't network, build friendships.
Yeah.
Like, just really build friendships with people
Amen.
you genuinely like. And I find the actors that come in all the time for me, I've been building little friendships, and it's like not taking it personally. It's like, hey, you know what? I have a protein bar. You want it? Like, it's taking that time to see me as a human being. I see you as a human being, and then you just, like, the next time that person comes in, you remember them more. Then you want to do more to help them, and it starts to just become this thing of, I have people who come in my room now, and it's like they're not auditioning. It's just like
Hanging out with a friend.
And we're like, cool, let's play. Let's see what we're going to do today. And like, let's figure
That's
it out.
how we wish it would be with everybody,
I
really.
wish it was like that with
Because that's one of the things I love about running session after having done it for a decade is just like seeing friends. It's like I get to see friends all day. They're going to come to me.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to them in Pasadena or wherever, to Manhattan Beach. They're coming to me to come and do art with me, and I'll get a chance to catch up with them a little bit and see how they're doing and maybe help them book a job.
Yeah.
And that's super awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the next phase of things. So you've given the group explanation, you've taken leadership, you've put people at ease, they know what they're doing, they're out there rehearsing whatever they're doing, and now they're coming into the room, and we've got, essentially their slate. We've got the moment before they slate, which is when they're setting their stuff down, standing on the mark. We, check them in on the computer, right? So how many times has this happened to you where it's like, okay, what's your name? Like, hi, my name is Bud. It's like, no, it's not your slate yet. I just need to check you in onto the computer, right? So you check them in, you take their thumbnail, digital thumbnail, and then you do the slate. So you talked about hands earlier, about how at Christmas parties, we all talk about how nobody knows what to do with their hands.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick. Also, before that, if you have an interesting spelling to your name,
Yes.
just offer that.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
please.
because if it's a commercial audition and if they're using LA Casting or Fast Cast, I know it sounds simple, but I get crazy spellings, and I'll try all these different things. And here's the thing: just doing that is like, yes, thank you. It's just a simple time saver.
I
Right?
was just thinking about that the other day, and I'm
Yep.
so glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
100%.
Someone else knew their computer fed.
Oh, yeah.
You guys can go on. I'm gonna go rest.
Okay.
But it was your comment.
That's all right. We could circle back around.
Wait, what comment?
he said he left, and he's like, you guys keep talking about, but it was your comment. You were the one talking.
Oh,
You're
he was
spelling the name.
Oh yeah,
Spelling
the
the
emails.
If you have a name like Riley, and it's okay, I type in and I can't find you, and no, it's RYLIEGHHY, and like, would have been nice to just
Right?
throw a little of that out there, because nobody else has that spelling.
I just had a technical question for you guys. So you go into these rooms, and each time is a different setup, or are they all the same setups?
All the rooms are pretty much the same in terms of like one camera, the technology,
Different consoles.
the lights. We usually have 3 lights. We usually have a backdrop. You've got a blank space, but they're all different setups in terms of like what we have to do. So like one day we might be making a barista station. The next day we might be making a car. The next day it's just completely blank and someone's just walking through and talking.
But in terms of the software, there are 2 major systems that are used in LA. And one is called Casting Frontier, and the other one is Casting Network. So we call it LA Casting here in LA. And so one is Fast Cast, that is the LA casting version, and the other one is Casting Frontier. And so
iSession.
Or iSession. So based upon what casting director with whom you're working, which system you're going to have. So those are the only two differences. Like you'll either be doing Fast Cast or iSession, and then from there. But everything else is essentially the same. You'll walk into every studio and you just start off with the basics. Where's power? And then we find power first, and then you start building
Turn
up
on
from
your
there.
computer.
Yeah. And then sound checking and all that, and making sure that camera's white balanced and all those little things that you do.
And I found, because like I started in Canada, and most of the session runners were not actors. Like here in LA, almost all of us are, but there really weren't that many of them. And so they were all like guys that were wanting to make films, or really techie guys. So I found that the studios there didn't actually have techs. You were expected to know, and we're working on like the hard drives, we're working on all this like sort of older equipment. So when something didn't work right, I was expected to know. And when I first started, I had just first started in Toronto, it was terrifying. It was like what John was talking about earlier with like, no, everything's fine. You're just like, what do I do? But it taught me a lot about figuring out how to source the problem and really understanding my equipment, so that when I moved here, I felt spoiled because we had techs that we could run to every time, but it allowed me to really understand my equipment at a different level, which I appreciate.
Important.
Yeah, super important.
So going off of what you said, John, so in addition to giving us some help if you have a unique spelling to your name, that will save us time looking you up in the system. Another thing that's just a real thing that I notice is that, and there's a book I read a long time ago. I think it was called Nudge. It might be Why We Buy. I'm confusing the two sometimes. But in it said how part of the reason why some stores have those like double sets of double doors to like kind of is that people don't feel like they've really entered a space until they've really gone deep into a space. So they noticed that stuff they would have by the door, people wouldn't buy because they wouldn't like just stop the first thing they came into the store and look at something on a display right there 2 feet in. They'd want to walk deep into the store to really feel like they're now shopping for stuff. So that's what people do with their belongings. When they come into our studios, like they'll walk all the way to the far end of the studio and drop all their crap down next to me or something. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
I put a table by the front door
Yeah.
just so you wouldn't have to waste another 30 seconds grabbing all your stuff. You know what I mean? So you normally look for a spot by the door to put all your personal belongings down so that you don't have to then spend another 15, 20 seconds at the end just coming all the way back and getting all your stuff.
Can I just go back to group directions for a second, because this just reminded me of like, this is how you know right away people who know how to audition and people who are newer to auditioning, is when you do a group explanation, you have everyone come in and then you walk into the room. The people that are standing facing the camera, have not been in that many group directions. Because when you actors come in for a group direction, you should always stand like parallel with the camera so that you're facing the scene, because that's where us session runners are going to be and showing you what to do. And it's like always one of those things. It's like it's immediately I know who has done this before.
Why don't you stand over there? Because you don't know what you're doing.
And then the same thing with like bringing in your stuff. How often people come in and then they just like drop their purse on the set, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like that, it's just like the rookie moves that kind of like give you away.
Oh, and here's my go-to line when I walk in and people are standing on the stage side as opposed to the camera side is like, over on that side, everyone, unless you're going to show me, which would be very impressive.
I always say to those people who like come in, like one of them got the explanation, the other didn't. I was like, do you know what's going on? And they're like, oh no, it's fine. She gave me the explanation.
No.
If you trust her,
She did.
if you trust that, then fine, we'll go with that.
Also, you might think, well, why, all these little things, little time savers. Well, the thing is, if we lose a minute a group, we see so many more groups than like TV and film. That's the big thing. So we might see 100 groups in a day, and if we lose a minute a group, that's 100 minutes. And, what that does then is it shrinks our time as far as we can spend with you, shrinks the time we can spend with other groups, puts the pressure on us, so we don't have as much time to pull the best out of you.
And like Charles said, 60 minutes. We only get an hour. We can't go into overtime.
So that's why I think these little things, they do add up, and that's why they're important to us, because we see them all the time, and you maybe are like, if you're auditioning whatever twice a week or something, you don't realize how much they add up, but we see it all the time.
And I get it, because I've done a number of theatrical castings as well, and they're great. They're a different entity, though. the schedules, whereas we will see in a day, an average day, say 100 people, and I think that I'm being,
Easy.
that's a conservative estimate. We'll see 100 people in a day, okay? For commercials, based on whatever the roles are throughout the course of that day. In a theatrical session, I may see 15 to 20, based on how many roles, whatever it is that we're doing. And so there's more time. And you get in, and when you acclimate to that in terms of coming in for a theatrical audition, it is more about you. I get to work with Sean or with Avery and Sean. So, hey man, look, this is what we're doing here. Let's get into the space. Let's understand this. We have a little time to talk, or so that I can really get into who this character is, because it's more about you bringing that character to life than you bringing the product to life. I always say, you are not the star of the commercial, but you are the star of the story. Get into that later. That's just, but anyway, theatrical auditions, there is a little bit more of a feel of connectivity, or reciprocity, in terms of here's what we're doing for this art together. So that when you then take that to the commercial world, you're not going to be handheld to that degree, because we don't have the minutes to give you. So I want everybody to know, you guys, we love you. We want everybody to book the job, but you got to understand, the time you're taking to get in and cozy into the room is time you're taking from us to actually get you where you need to be. You know, and that's, and again,
That's why, like, handshaking, for example, right? It's a perfect example. I talk about it in my book as well. Is like assume the love. We don't need to shake hands. I don't have enough Purell for every person's hands that come in, right? It's like, that's not going to affect
some
the
of y'all
performance.
motherfuckers is dirty. Just saying. I'm just saying.
It's not going to make the take any better. Like, we're already cool, so we don't need to do that. You know, like, so that 10, 15 seconds, and what's worse is what I call the cascading handshake effect, right? Which is
Then everyone does it.
right, because one person does it, like, oh, well, I don't want to be the one asshole who didn't shake it, the hand of the session director. So now everybody has to comment. I'm like, no, just go, just leave, because those handshakes is like 2-3 seconds that is completely unnecessary to slow down per person. Okay, so we've had we've had the pre-slate, right? We've checked you in, you put your stuff down. Now you're standing on the mark and you do your slate. Of course, people know to hold their hands in front of their face, or if they don't, or even if they do, they forget,
It's
right?
okay. We know you're pretty.
Yeah, we'll get to spend plenty of time with your face. And then, of course, the other parts of a slate that can be extended, whether it's questions we need to ask you, be honest, for the love of God, be honest, especially with things like, do you have allergies, or if you have a valid driver's license, or things like that.
Or skill sets. I did a casting where we were casting surfers, older men who could surf, and put this one guy in, and he was delightful, and he was gregarious and good looking, and he had every requisite that he needed. Got to the call back. Can you surf? Yeah, absolutely, great. Got to the shoot, and he could not. He was like, they needed somebody who could drop in every time, and make this downturn and cut through the wave. He couldn't do it. So they had to fire him, and that kills the production.
Yeah.
It's $100,000 plus a day budget, and he just stopped it. When last I checked in on what was going on, they were taking legal action against him for having ruined their day. I don't know what happened after that, but you guys, it's legitimate. If you cannot ride a horse, don't tell us you can ride a horse. If you cannot surf, do not tell us that you can, because if you book it and you get called on it, legally you are going to be in trouble if you cannot do what you said you can do.
And we wouldn't be asking in that specific audition if we didn't need you to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so
Yeah.
okay.
So, and then the other thing that a lot of actors trip up on is the personality question, or just the interview question, right? Because sometimes that's all your audition is just that. So, what do you have planned for the weekend or something? Especially when they don't have like actual dialogue and they just want to mix and match faces and get to know people's personality. If you just give us like a one-word answer or something, you drove all the way across town for nothing. Now, we don't want you to be the person who's droning on and on and on and on forever as well. So there's a healthy balance of somewhere around 30-ish seconds, it feels like.
Yeah, 25, 30.
You know what I mean? Where you've just told us a story. I say use as many specifics as possible, because we always like somebody who is from where we're from, or who is into the same things that we're into, or whatever. So the more specific you can be, instead of just saying like, what do you have planned for the weekend? Well, I might go see a movie, and then I'll just probably just like garden or something. Okay, great. But if somebody was like, oh, there's this awesome movie. It's like, Pets 2, Secret Life of Pets 2, and I love the first one, and I like this particular actor's performance, and then, I'm growing some tomatoes, then I'm growing some zucchini and this or that, and I love strawberries. It's like, cool, I like strawberries too. If I was on set all day with you, we could talk about berries. Like, that's great. Like, just use specifics because it puts us more into the world.
I also find using specifics is great, and I don't come from it from that point of view, but it does the same thing, because what I want to see is I want to see your eyes spark. Like, if you're just like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going to go to the movies. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to the movies, I'm actually going to go see, Secret Life of Pets, like, now you've become engaged in what you're talking about, and your eyes start popping. And that's what I want to see. And something that's interesting, like I always say, don't say that you hike or do yoga, because it's LA and
Or an
everyone.
actor.
Yeah, or an actor.
Do not say that.
Because in LA, everyone hikes and does yoga. So it's like, I'm for sure you do something more interesting. I believe it. And also, whatever you're talking about, if we say, like, what do you do for fun? Make it something physical. So we can kind of, because no one's going to shoot you reading a book. Well, I guess they would, but not for long. You'd be reading a book, and then you'd be going and doing something. I always want to think of, like, imagining you physically doing something. Yeah, using your whole instrument. Those are my things that I always say.
I think, there's sometimes there's a stereotype of commercials that has to be real smiley and stuff like that. And I think, it depends kind of what works for you. So some people are a little more serious, some people are a little more smiley. But I will say, this happened relatively recently where I was asking personality questions, and I was like, well, what is a surprise that someone's like done to you? And the guy's answer, he was in a group, was when my wife divorced me. And that like took all the air out of the room. So I'm not saying it have to be positive, but it was like, what? And then he was like, from an email, I think. And we were all like,
oh, geez.
Yeah, and so to me, and maybe sometimes you're on the spot, it just comes out, but that's a rough one for everyone to recover from, because it's so much.
Yeah.
So not that you have to always be, I really don't believe, you don't have to be positive all the time, but that was just kind of, I don't know, that was interesting.
But I find that positive thing very interesting, and I actually had a student recently, and she does great at game shows, and she comes in with just like so much energy and just like huge smiles, and that's just naturally who she is. But what then happens is on camera it looks really quite fake sometimes. And so we were talking about that, and it's about dialing it down, but it's not about shutting it off. And it's the same thing with people who aren't big smilers. It's just about knowing how to play your instrument and knowing where the dial is. So it's like, I never want her to just cut it down, because that's not who she is. She has to be genuine to who she is, but she also has to be able to know how to play that. And and for her it became, I'm always naturally at 10, I need to go to a 7, and that worked for her. But then there's other people who, they like, their energy is just like really like low and quiet. It's like, so okay, where does it look like on your dial? Like, where do you have to turn that to still be truthful to you, but bring that positiveness, bring that like you on your best day,
Well, also, we live in an amazing age where you can do your homework on the product that you're going into, and moreover, I think you should. If you're going to go in for a Coors Light audition, then it takes 5 minutes. Go see what the last couple Coors Light commercials looked like, so that you kind of understand, so that even if it is a personality interview, we're just going to get to know you guys for a second. Okay, I know that this is a beer commercial, so I should probably be a little bit more upbeat, as opposed to it being a laxative commercial. And I could probably maybe tone it down a little bit. You understand the product. Understand, if I'm coming in for Rolaids or antacid, it might be nice to have a funny little oopsie story that, I don't know. You can do your homework, so you're not coming in flying blind.
Well, think about
all the
Corona
time.
ads. I mean, Corona ads are a great example. They're always on the beach. It's always super chill. I'm just saying, like, you know what the vibe is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
So what are you doing this weekend? I'm gonna try parasailing. Never done it. I'm really excited. Oh wow. Oh cool. Interesting. Oh, he's out there. I'm just.
Whereas like Geico right now is like super dry. So it's just like, having that kind of energy. You're not going to want to come in and be all like slapsticky, because that's not the right energy for their spots.
It behooves us as actors, because we will do that research for our theatrical roles. We will take the time to put that together there. So just take the time, so that when you come in, you don't get surprised by, oh, it was just a personality interview. No, not just. That was your audition. Now you're going to get paid a lot of money to show up on set because you did a little homework. You understood what the product is and kind of how to embody that.
So it's starting to dawn on me that we're probably going to need another session of this to finish the callback and the edit. You know.
Oh, we're not even there yet. Yeah.
We're not through the first call yet.
Right.
We're not even past lunch.
Have you done a part 1 and part 2 yet?
No, I think this will have to be the first one because there's
like
so
Star
much
Wars
great
right
stuff
here.
coming out,
Star
you
Wars
guys.
style.
There's so much great stuff coming out that people don't get a chance to hear, that we don't get to compare notes with each other.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm just saying, okay, we've done the slate.
Yeah.
Right, and even like when we have you do turns, when we have you show us body parts, things like that, like, you know, you can't change your body at that moment, so don't apologize for your body. Just do it with a great attitude.
And those, like, when you put up your hands and then you're already apologizing for the hangnail or for the chipped nail polish or the, like, manicure that you didn't get. And just like, dude, unless you're missing a digit.
That's
or
really what
you've-
it's about.
Yeah.
Because, you know, working on a particular company's product, commercials, somebody ended up getting cast who was missing a digit. And from that point forward, anytime we did a job for that company, they're always getting a shot of the hands just to make sure we've visually seen all of your digits.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving beyond the slate, is there anything else you always want to say about the slate?
I just want to say about the digit thing. Sometimes it doesn't always take you out of the running. Sometimes it's just so they know they need to hire someone.
Same thing with
Yeah.
tattoos.
Close up on the phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just don't,
We want to
don't
see your
get too-
tattoos, not because it'll put you out, but just so we're not surprised. It's all about not surprising the client.
Oh, here's something on the slate. Are you willing to shave? Just say yes or no. And it's all right to say no. It's just we need to ask so that when the client sees it, if they don't like it, they know that, oh yeah, they have to keep it for a role or whatever. I always say, if you're really attached to your beard or whatnot, say, it's negotiable. It's negotiable. We can work that out. Let my performance win the day, and then we can see from there. But don't start putting in little jokes or funny things. And ladies,
Thank you.
if you're slated next to a guy and we ask the guy, are you willing to shave? And he says yes. And the lady then comes in to try to be witty and say, me too.
I'm also willing to shave.
I'm also willing to shave. Yeah, don't say that.
I'm so glad you just said that.
Because the first thing we think of, where are you willing to shave? And why would it need to be manicured right now? And it's not funny.
It's a joke we've heard a zillion
1,000
times.
times.
Like, you think you're the first one to come up with it, and you are not. You're not even the first one that day.
Yeah, so just don't. Ladies, just don't. We're not asking you. Are you willing to shave? We're not asking you
And
that.
I do have a casting director that will, if she's in the room, she will stop and make you redo the slate. I mean, if you're a woman who says that, because it annoys her so much.
Oh, that is funny.
So please don't. The only unique one that I heard recently is I asked a guy, this big full beard, like, you willing to shave? I did.
That's funny.
I thought that was funny.
One thing now, I want to know your opinion on it. Is I was just having this discussion recently with someone. There's this actor, we'll keep it gender neutral, that comes in for me, and I've noticed now a few times, always slates the exact same way. Always brings their hand up, and it's like, I can literally, no one can see me, but it's like, hi, puts their hand up, waves, says their name, and kind of like leans back with a smile. And it's so clear when you're editing it or you're seeing it again and again. I'm like, that's so prescribed, like every single time. And to me, I don't like it because it makes me feel like you're being disingenuous, because it's obviously something that you've like decided to do. But every time this person has come in for a callback, the clients love them. And so I'm like, then I was like, well, maybe they're onto something. So what is your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Be genuine. If that's a genuine extension of your personality and you are a rehearsed sort of person, do it. Like John was saying, you don't have to be overly gregarious and positive all the time. Negativity never sells product, so never be in a hateful mood. But that having been said, I always tell my students, be you. Like for me, I book cops, lawyers, firefighters. That's kind of what I do. So I know I have that energy coming in. So I'm not going to try to be slapsticky and silly, even though I think that I have a dazzling sense of humor. But I'm not going to come in trying to wow you with that, because I know that's not how I read.
But do you think
So
it's...
I would change.
yeah.
I would change. He says be genuine. I would say if it works. That would be my answer, right? If
Yeah.
it works. And the reason I bring that up is I always think I was a reader, and shout out to this actor Hans, who would bring in a scene where he did like a bunch of different accents. He was great with accents because you could bring in your own scene. I was a reader at a casting workshop, and every casting director was wowed by it because he could do great accents. I'd seen the scene like 50 times, but every time he came in, they were impressed because it was a really great scene and it showcased his skills.
Yeah.
And it worked.
And it worked.
Yeah.
So my thing, and I thought that was really smart on his part. And I think it was a scene he had written for himself almost just to showcase that. So I think if it works,
Yeah.
to me that I mean, I agree with the genuineness, but I just think especially with it's so difficult what we're doing, if something's working,
Well, and
great.
I think maybe that's part of it is too, is that like as the session runners, we see these people again and again and again. So we get to see what is sort of quote unquote
Everything.
fake and,
Yeah.
you know, what is really happening in the moment. They don't get to see that. So that's very interesting.
I think, yeah.
And that's a great point. If it works, I think that if you come from a genuine place, you're going to find what works.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. They
Yeah,
just got
that's-
married.
that-
Genuine and works.
Boom.
Just
See
got
that?
married.
High five. Boom. Do we count it? Do we need to Foley that that five? Can we get that in
Well,
post?
you three just said what I was going to say is like, you know, if I had the kind of personality where I wanted to do something like that, then I should do that. And then if it's memorable or whatever, fine. But I wouldn't like change who I am to be like that just to try to be schlocky and stand out or something like that. You know, like I'm just genuine when I do my thing, but other people have their little shtick. And it's like, well, you know that's what their brand is. That's what they're trying to put out there.
Although
Yeah.
I did have a guy who came in once for a callback and we had to reuse him a number of times. And so I had to keep reslating him and he had a beard. And each time I would say, willing to shave, and he'd stroke his beard and go, okay. And he'd done it 5 times in a row where I was like, okay, let's do something different here. Because I think it actually did end up taking him out of the running because they got bored with it. They
Yeah.
thought it was funny the first time.
Yes. So
yeah.
once you've communicated who you are, maybe just let that be. All right. Okay. So moving into the takes here. Okay. So we've done the slate. Now we've got that little bit of time before you do the first take with someone. Now this is just my own personal opinion and how I run my room, but there may be a diversity of opinion on this. I find that actors are incredibly disempowered in that section of time between the slate and when they start their first take, in terms of taking whatever time that they need or doing whatever they need to do to make sure that when we start rolling, that they can really do a great job. So it's almost like there's an unwritten rule where you can't speak or you can't be vocal with your, pregame, where, they don't look over the board and make sure they see where everything is at in case they need it. Most of the times, and I've been saying this almost since the very first session I've ever run, is after the slate is over, I will say, take your time and let me know when you're ready. Because I would rather you take 5, 10, 15 seconds to make sure that we have a really great first take than to use the first take as a rival, which it is for so many actors, where they're like, just do one to get it out of their system, to say the words out loud for the first time, and then it's almost always the second take that's going to be better because they've gotten one out of their system. But that also wastes a lot of our time, every single group, because we know that we're going to need to get that first take out just to have somebody arrive, and then we're going to give them adjustments, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever said this, let's just do one and then we'll adjust from there or something,
Yeah, I say that all the
So, but it would be nice if you didn't have to sacrifice the first minute, to the gods of unpreparation or something. So I like an actor to use their voice, activate their instrument. Now, they shouldn't take 30 seconds or a minute. You should be using the time outside the room to get your body prepped. But if you just need 5 or 10 seconds to, personalize the camera, look over the boards, ask any questions or make sure your pronunciation of something like, xylitol or whatever it is,
I do find actually that, and I don't find that to be much of an issue. Like, I find the people who audition regularly usually take that time. And I always look at, let's do one and then I'll redirect as more of, I need to see where you're coming from. So I need to see where your baseline is before I start giving you those thousands of notes that you might not need. I find the newer people, the people that are maybe not quite as experienced, they may feel that pressure to rush. But I don't know.
One of the things I
don't
like
notice
to
it.
do to help with that, especially if they're newer or just whatnot, or even if it's a amalgam, a mix of a seasoned veteran and a couple newbies, is, hey, you know what, you guys, look, let's just do this. Let's roll on this rehearsal, see if we catch lightning in a bottle, and if we do, great. I'm always going to roll. because you could hit it and boom, and we got it, and then we can move on. But just by saying that, let's just rehearse this one, let's just get it up. I'm just going to roll on it, see what we got. Those newer people, all of a sudden, they feel a little bit more relaxed. Like, oh, okay, I can just be myself and just do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, hey, you guys.
Sometimes I won't even tell them I'm rolling.
Really?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not in their head about it. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is just practice. They're like sneaky, like space bar.
I had that with these callbacks we did just like on Thursday, because they were doing these really creative handshakes together that they'd been practicing outside. And then when the director was like, can you slow it down, like do it and just sort of like marking it? And they would like practice it once to just like show, yeah, okay, yeah, and then we go here, okay, great, and it would be perfect, and then action, and just like the whole thing would just like fall apart. So I did. I just like turned my sound off and then would just like record the rehearsals.
practice.
Yeah, 'cause I was like, it was always better. Yeah.
Okay, so the actor has done, and we've only got a couple more minutes here, so I think we should do a part 2 of this. I think this is so great. And there's so much to come out of like even just talk. So let's talk about the first take and after the first take.
We're at about an hour 30, just so you know.
Yeah, cool. So the first take has taken place, and now it's time to redirect or something, right? So for me, I tend to laugh after every take just to put them at ease and make them feel like I am on their side and I enjoyed what they did and something like that. And sometimes they'll be like, "What? Why are you laughing?" Like, no, dude, I'm having fun. Like it's fine.
I just slowly shake my head like.
I just sigh.
I went to school for business.
Do you cut people off in the middle of a take? Because I know some people who will let just the take entirely play out and waste all of that time. Whereas if I see something's not working, you know what? Let's stop. Let's start again. Like try this, do that. Don't forget to do that. Blah blah blah. Like I like to just like let's.
Depends.
You know what I mean? I don't need to.
I will cut people off, but I really try to intuit with the actor. So if I do that once and all of a sudden I see them kind of wilt like a flower, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that again because this actor, or sometimes more experienced, I do that and they're like, oh, great, thank you, because I was going down this path. So also depends sometimes how much time I'm feeling. So like first half of the day, a lot of times I'll just let it go. And the second half of the day, I'm like, I know that's going to take you in a weird direction. So I'll kind of jump in, but I'm hoping it doesn't throw the actor off of like, ugh, like what I do wrong. It's like, no, let me just help course correct.
Yeah, and it's also like if it's their first take, I'll usually let them do it because I want them to get it out of their body like once anyway. I don't want them to have to stop that creative process in the middle. But if they've done a couple or whatever, and it's just like,
How many takes will you typically give people?
depends.
But I was going to say, what's interesting, what's changed, I mean, now it's been a little bit, but is now we can do more takes and we can move them around. So that's an advantage and a disadvantage, I guess. But that used to not be an option. So like that first take was like kind of what was there. So, I mean, typically it's 2. I mean, that's almost always what it is.
Yeah,
too,
if we
but,
need to
I mean,
like,
depends.
I find if we need to show the clients 2, if we need to keep 2, then typically we'll do 3, so we can lose the one that's not as good. If we only need to keep 1, then we'll do 2. Like,
But here's something I
but
would just
it's
say
not
real
always.
quick is I firmly believe, and I'd be interested to hear a bunch of commercial commercial directors, and if they're honest, I don't think they always watch the second take. So I think that first take is really important because people are so busy now.
Yeah.
I really think we do the work, we put it out there. I just don't think all of them do. I think they're really busy. That's a little bit more of a theory, but I just tell actors, it's like, if you're trying to save it for the second one,
Well,
I
that's
like
why
that, Sean, be prepared for the first, because sometimes I don't think they even watch the second.
I mean, I always try and put the best one first, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes they don't even watch the takes. They'll watch
Right,
the
they'll
slate.
watch the slate and decide based on
That's the worst thing
look.
in voiceover work or voice actors. A lot of times I tell the actors to do their slate at the end of their take and paste it onto the beginning, because it should be in the feel and the sound of that
The timbre
voice.
of the voice,
Oh,
right.
It should be in that character, because when you're listening to voiceover or voice work for video game, you have hundreds, sometimes thousands to listen to, and you hit play and you hear the wrong voice, you move right on to the next one. But sometimes people slate a certain way and then go into their take. And so slating at the end in just audio.
That's great.
After having done the
because
work,
they're right
yeah.
in that character and their tone is right and the
Yeah.
pacing and the feel and the right smile on there, and it just is very smooth. And then you move that to the beginning. So I also have the experience that sometimes people never listen past the slate.
Yeah, I had one where we had to do we had to do a little bit of a session before the callbacks were going to start. And that's where I kind of learned that, because the director got there and then she needed to know who from that session to bring back in at the end of the day of callbacks. And so she just stood over my shoulder and we like went through and slate, no. And then that slate, she was like, okay, now I want to watch theirs. Okay, they'll come in. Slate, watch theirs. Watch, no, they're not coming. Like, so it was like so fast.
Yeah. So also, it really is dependent upon the amount of time that you have. Like, if we're slammed, I just don't have the time as much as, and that's why going back to the group explanation, it's so critical that we're very precise with that, so that when you come in, it's like, you guys, and I'll be honest, I'm up against it. I'm going to give you guys 2 takes. Maybe I could squeeze out 3, but only if your first couple are sharp and I see something. But if not, this is it. So we've got to be on, because if we, again, you have an hour, and moreover, we just, you've got to get people in and out. So I would love to give them 4 or 5 takes, to really, and if we have the time, you see that, there's something there. Yeah, great. Absolutely. I love it. I love directing actors and playing an act, but a lot of times we don't have that. We don't have that luxury.
We want you to succeed. We'll keep your best takes. We do more takes than we need just to make sure we can choose the best ones, and we can rearrange the order in which they're presented. So to John's point, your best take is front loaded so that they'll see the best of what you did. We're on your side in that way.
Yeah. And remember, we're the ones seeing your work and critiquing it, and then the casting directors are pretty much coming to us. How did he do? How did she do? Because outside of the first group or 2, they just don't have the time to sit and watch and critique your work.
And then then, if they do, they're watching the takes that we kept. Because I've had that happen where I've been like, who was not great? And I'd be like, this person wasn't good. It wasn't great. Maybe you should watch it. And then we watch it back and I'm watching with them. And I'm like, oh, actually, from just the footage that I kept, they weren't that bad. I was like, okay, never mind. But so like they don't get the hands-on that we do with these actors, for sure.
Because there's even a simple editing tool in there. So sometimes like I'll take off, like if an actor like looks right at the camera or at me, I'm like, oh, okay, we didn't stop yet. But I can just clip that off,
Right,
So
you can
rearranging
trim
and clipping, so
individual
I'll do
takes.
simple edits, So
And
to make them look good.
and we're more apt to do that if you come in with a professional, nice working attitude, and you're a good person. We want the best for you. So presents and bribes, those sorts of things, I think, is the takeaway.
Dark
You can
chocolate.
bring those in.
Love dark
Dark chocolate.
With caramel.
I'm a big fan.
Caramel in
I'm
there,
a big fan of money. I have a daughter about to go to college. I don't have a problem with that.
Bribe's not illegal in our business.
But I will say though, I do genuinely appreciate when they send a letter, like a little note
card or something,
specifically to me, because that did take some like effort, and it makes me feel good. And I don't get them very often.
Well, okay, so kind of as a parting piece of advice then, one of the things I share with all of the people that I teach or whenever I speak is that if you've gone to a commercial audition and you can't tell me who ran your session and who ran your lobby, unless they were so busy that it would have been, inappropriate to bog them down by asking them or something. But how hard is it just to say, hey, what was your name? Or like, what was the lobby assistant's name? With 100 people in the country and maybe 50, 60 of us that run sessions as much as, you guys certainly do. In the last year and a half of me being involved in union leadership, I've really cut back running sessions where I almost never run sessions right now just because I can only run sessions for union stuff. And so, otherwise we can do a mix of union and non-union and that kind of thing. But I've really cut back on that. So I'm not doing it at 5-6 days a week like I used to do it. But you should know who ran your session. It's not that many people to get to know.
No.
And you build that 2-minute friendship like you said, Ava. And then, we got your back when you come in the room.
Although I find people don't even necessarily know the casting director. Because friends will be like, hey, I got an audition, a commercial audition. I'm like, great, who was the casting director? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was in Santa Monica somewhere. I'm like, Ocean Park? Yeah, I don't know, is that 27?
They don't even know when they walk in the door. I'm here for the audition. Well, there are
Cool.
6 studios. What are you here for? The audition for
My
the
agent sent me.
commercial? Just go away.
My
Yeah.
agent just told me to come here. It's
Yeah.
like, well, then can I tell you to go back right
Oh, for reals, the one
As
I
long as
had,
you're listening to people.
the bra commercial that I just did where they had to get undressed, legit the girl was like, I didn't wear a bra, is that going to be a problem? I was like, yeah, it's a bra commercial. She's like, well, my agent didn't tell me to. I was like, your agent shouldn't have to tell you to wear a bra to a bra commercial. Come on.
That's awesome.
And scene. All right, so we'll pick this up in part 2 for everybody listening.
I have a quick question for the actors in the room, not the session directors.
Oh,
Okay.
Have any of you found yourself session director on a commercial that you thought, this is perfect for me?
Yeah.
You weren't called in. Have you ever put yourself in for it, for your own, as a session
Most
director? Or
casting-
is that a huge no?
most casting directors will be fine with you putting yourself on
Yeah.
if it's appropriate for you. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
But know your range. Like, I'm not a young 30-something coquettish debutante, so
Look
I'm
at
not
me.
going to. Well, thank you. So, but if you know, like, yeah, this is in my lane, I always say, hey, listen, at the end of the day, can I throw myself on here? Yeah, sure, by all means.
And we'll throw each other on too. Like if I've booked jobs numerous times because I've just happened to have been at the studio and someone have been like, oh, come in for this. Sometimes because I think I'm right for it, or sometimes just they need another person to read with someone else. So absolutely, we do it all the time.
I have a question for you. Would you lose the beard?
Okay.
I'm willing to shave.
Oh boy.
There
All right,
you
thank
go.
you guys. We'll pick this up on the next
you,
one.
guys.
All right.